Hello and welcome to Fresh Perspectives. My name is Gail, and I'm happy to say I've been able to get both of the commissioners from the Chautauqua County Board of Elections on here today. Luz Torres was able to join us today, and I'm really happy about that. And of course, the other person that you see on camera is Brian Abram. And they are the two Board of Elections commissioners for Chautauqua County. Now, thank you for coming on, both of you again.
Thank you for having us.
Oh, you're welcome. Now, Luz, the last time that Brian was on, I had him get acquainted with the viewing audience a little bit by telling them something about himself. So that's what we're going to do with you today, since you have not been on before. So we would like you to tell us what kind of work, other types of work that you've done, and how you wound up becoming not only working at the Board of Elections for a long time, but also how did you wind up becoming commissioner?
Well, I have done human services work for 25 years. That was my passion, helping people, and I guess I started with social services, you know, and went that way. And then I started to work. My friend Doris told me about the Board of Elections.
Oh, okay.
And I had an interview with Norm, and you know, that's how I went into the Board of Elections. I started working as an election administrator and did work there, and then Doris was the deputy at the time. She left. I was made deputy to Norm, and when Norm retired, I ran for commissioner.
Okay. So now you are the commissioner. You like your job now?
Yes, I do.
Oh, good, good. I know Chris Burt, who works here at the television studio, he likes his job over there really well.
Yes, he's my deputy.
Yep, yep. Okay. Now, you have some primaries coming up.
Yes, we do. Usually in New York State, unless it's a presidential year, you'll have one. Currently, we will have two. There was a disagreement about how the lines were drawn, and it turns out, long story short, that they will have two primaries. One in June, on June 28th, and one in August on the 23rd. So it's a unique year. It broke off the primaries into two sections. So the voters in Chautauqua County, or certain voters in Chautauqua County, will have the opportunity to go to the polls at least twice this summer for the primaries.
Now, who can vote at these primaries? I know I know from being a poll site worker, I know that a lot of people come in when their party is not having a primary, and we have to send them away. So who are we voting for, and what are they running for, and who can vote at each of them?
Well, in New York State, it's a closed voting process for primaries, meaning you have to be a member of that party to participate. For the June 28th, it will be all Democrats and Republicans, because you will have Democrat and Republican candidates vying for those spots for the November ballot. So exclusively coming up in June will be just registered Republicans and Democrats in Chautauqua County. You're talking roughly 50,000 people out of the 80,000. So there should be a good mix of people coming in. You will get people who are civic-minded. We'll see the sign outside saying, "Vote here, vote today."
So
and they think it's for
Yes.
them, and they'll stop in and say, "What are we voting for?" And Gail, you'll have to tell them, "Well, are you a registered Republican or Democrat?" And if the answer is no, you're going to say, "This is just for Republicans and Democrats." So I'm sure you'll be answering that question most of the day. Again, any primary that is set up, it depends on who's running. And any of the major parties that are holding a primary Only those individuals registered within that party prior to that date can come in and vote. So
Okay.
the first one we know will be all Democrats and Republicans. The second one we don't know yet because we don't know exactly how the parties and the individuals who want to move forward will be part of it. So at this point, we're assuming it will be Democrats and Republicans all over again come August. But again, until we get the paperwork filed at the Board of Elections, we're not 100% sure. What we will do, though, is we will tell everybody, since June was a primary that everybody knew that they were going to have, and you got your little card in the mail, we'll send information to anybody who is part of a primary and give them the opportunity to say, hey, look, there's another one in August. A card will come out. It will give them the basic information like we give everybody every year, stating, hey, if you'd like to participate, it's August 23rd. Here are the opportunities. Here's the 9 days of early voting. Here's your poll site. Just a reminder. So the educational piece will be there for that primary. And again, we understand that this will be new to people, different for people. It is different for us. At least in the last few years, we've not run double primaries. This year we will, but we'll make sure to do the best of our ability between spots like yourself, media outlet, anything we can do to educate people with cards or information, we will do to the best of our ability to tell people, hey, Republicans and Democrats, or whatever the scenario happens to turn out to be, you have an opportunity to come vote.
Yes, I got my card in the mail last month, and on the front of the card, it said, you do have a primary. So that means that I am going to this next primary to vote. Okay, but sometimes it will say that you don't. So I just sort of wanted to bring that up again because I think it would help people understand whether or not they're supposed to go to vote if they would take the time to read their cards.
That card is very full of information. And see, when you got your yellow card, the people had already filed the paperwork at the Chautauqua County Board of Elections or in Albany to create the June 28th primary. So we had a snapshot of what was going to be profiling for you. If you were a member of a conservative party, Green Party, or whatever party, or no party, you would have gotten that same card that would have said there is no primary for you. But if you're one of the two major parties, the paperwork had already been filed for June 28th. So the yellow card that you get, which is late April, early May, it will give all voters the one and only primary, which is normally is, the snapshot of can you participate or can you not participate, please come out and vote. So that card is critically important for all voters to understand what opportunities they do have for voting. So you're right, they need to take a second and review what that says, because it's all about you, and that's the best information. It tells you where you vote, it tells you what party you belong to, it tells you do you have a primary. So it's a nice informational piece, and again, if people can please take a second to review it, that works.
I know, I was in the hardware store one day last year, and the guy at the cash register, well, you know, it had something to do with using my charge card, where all I had to do was show it to, instead of inserting it, and to pay. And it caused me to think about the fact that if people bring those cards in, we can scan them and get them signed in more quickly. So I bothered to mention that to him that day, that if he brings that in, it'll make it quicker and easier for him to get signed in. And then I saw him when he came in, and I saw that he had his voter card with him. And he just happened to be getting signed in at the table I was working at the time, and I'm going, oh, good, people listen to me, you know. So
it does say that in the card as well, like you stated.
Yeah.
If they take the time to read it, it's very informational.
Right.
And yeah, it'll speed up the process.
Right, yeah. So now back to the primaries, though. Okay, so we're voting for governor this year in New York State. Now, are there both Republicans and Democrats then that have to get voted in the primary
Yes.
in June. Is that
That
gonna
is
be the
correct.
June
You'll have
primary?
multiple candidates going for the one position on both sides of the aisle. So with that said, all it takes is two, but there is more than two. So you'll have choices if you come in as a Democrat or if you come in as a Republican, you'll have your choices for the governor's position, the lieutenant governor's position, to decide who you would like to move forward to November.
Oh, okay. Now, are the ballots, is it going to be different ballots for the Republicans and the Democrats?
Yes.
They, each one.
Yes.
The Democrats will be voting in the primary for who they want to have running, and the Republicans also, they will be the ones voting for who they want to have running for governor. So
Correct. Two separate
that's correct.
tables at your poll site that never the two shall meet. When you come in the door, either you go to the Republican table, you go to the Democratic table,
Right.
depending on your party affiliation, and those ballots are totally separate. And it will be a primary that means we're entertaining Republicans and Democrats. They're the only ones that can participate. But when they do that participation, they go directly to the table that will make sure that they get the Republican ballot. And they'll be signed in and handed the ballot and go do their business. And we'll do it for across the county to make sure that everybody, has the access to the ballot that's necessary for their party.
Did either one of you feel like, you don't have to if you don't want to, but feel like mentioning who is running?
I don't have all the names specifically off the top
Oh,
of my
you
head.
don't.
I do know that I think there's 4, I believe, on the Republican side and 3 on the Democratic side
correct.
of candidates that are statewide that you'll have the opportunity to talk or look at. We will put up the sample ballots on our website for everybody to get a review prior to coming in, so they don't see the ballot for the very first time if they don't want to. We'll also have the sample ballots posted on the walls at the sites, and you can get a chance to review who you'd like. We will definitely make sure, to the best of our ability. You'll see a lot of commercials, obviously, also, but we'll educate everybody to make sure that they kind of have an idea of what their choices are, who their choices are, and to at least participate.
Okay. Okay, and then you don't really know yet about the August one.
We don't. We
Okay.
do know that the lines have to be redrawn for congressional in New York State Senate. And then after the lines are drawn, they're going to open up a period to allow people to get ballot access. And once they do that, there'll be timeframes necessary to get the information back in so we can then formulate the ballots for the August 23rd. But those will be the 2 positions that would be available for anybody in August. New York State Senate, United States Congressional.
Okay. Okay. I'm just in the process of getting acquainted with somebody who was a state senator in New Hampshire. She has just moved to Chautauqua County. I'm going to be interviewing her on my next episode, but she's not doing that now. She's retired. But that was kind of interesting. Now, I thought it might be nice to remind people to re-register if they have moved since the last election day. Some people get awfully confused about where they're supposed to go and what they're supposed to do. And, sometimes people who used to live in Mayville have moved to Westfield, and they come into the Mayville poll site expecting to be able to to vote, and then we wind up having to send them to the poll site that they're supposed to be voting at, which is why we ask them if they still live at the address we have. But
It does, and if the records are up to date, it makes your life at the poll site a lot easier. We daily move people. We take the DMV records. Luce did that for years as part of what, when she was coming through her process of becoming part of the Board of Elections.
Yes.
You probably moved thousands, if not tens of thousands of individuals. And we'd like to have them where they need to be, and we will put out a, basically, deadline necessary and to limit the amount of individuals that need to go from, say, Mayville to Westfield. If our records are up to date, which they hopefully are to the best of our ability, but we can't move somebody unless they tell us they've moved, the DMV will catch them if they come in and change their driver's license and share that information with us. But in general, there is going to be a group of individuals who didn't get around to making sure that that information got to us. And you have to then, as a poll worker, make sure they go to the poll site where they are currently residing. So moving the individual down the hill to Westfield, they vote affidavit, which is they won't be able to access the machine. They'll have to get the paper ballot, fill out the form, which is basically what Luce will use eventually, or we used to, she used to use, to move that individual, and then we count their ballot and total it up with the Westfield individuals, not the Chautauqua individuals from Mayville. So it's a corrective measure at the very end, but if voters get the idea that they've moved and they understand that's part of their voting process, they need to make sure that that information comes to the Board of Elections. And we will be saying that loud and clear to the best of our ability to help them go to their right poll site and for help us and people like yourself to provide voting services, because we don't want them voting where they don't live. And the people, like I said, they get confused.
Except at early voting.
Early voting is different, but it still will say to them, where do you live?
Right.
If they live in Westfield, then we will definitely just get them back to that process of updating their records before they will be allowed to vote, because we need to then create them. As you know, in early voting, the ballot is created right in front of your eyes, your specific ballot. We will need to create a Westfield ballot for that individual because they no longer live here. So the mechanism is similar, it's just corrective measures, and again, if the voters can help us, we're more than grateful, because it does make sure that the process becomes quick and easy and you're where you're supposed to be. Early voting, like you had mentioned, it doesn't matter where you're from, you come vote, and early, it will create the ballots meant specifically for you. It finds you, it knows you, it will make the ballot if you're from Sherman or Westfield or Findlay Lake. It identifies you, and then it makes the ballot that is best for you, it's meant for you, and it gets the choices that you're supposed to be making.
It sounds like you have a lot of work to do over there, Luz.
Oh, we do. I did that for many years, doing voter registration, changing addresses through the motor vehicle, sending them in, or if something comes back, usually the post office will put on that they've moved, so we make those changes. Yeah, now we have other staff doing that. Yes.
Well, sometimes people get called for jury duty, and they usually blame that on the fact that they've been voting. And I remember talking about this with Chris Burt one time, and he goes, "Oh no, they don't get that information from us. They get it from the DMV." I remember last summer, I got 2 jury duty notices in 1 week. And one of them was Chautauqua County area trial, and the other one was for the Buffalo area. Well, anyways, I have a phobia of driving into Buffalo. So I'm not a city driver, so I had to get myself out of that one. And the other one was the Chautauqua County area one. I am old enough to get off. I'm over 70, so I was able to get off of the Buffalo one. And then the other one got canceled on account of the coronavirus, I think it was. But it was like I just got, anyway, I guess they get that information from the DMV instead of from you guys. Because you've always heard people complaining, "Oh, I'm never going to," if they get a jury duty notice, "I'm never going to vote again," or something like that. But
Yes.
That's not true. That's one of those situations where if somebody says it, then no one fact checks it and basically verifies. And in our situation, we were just in Jamestown High School, and I had just said to all the kids that were registering, "We're not going to sell your lists. This doesn't change anything for you. This doesn't get you called for jury. This doesn't, anything identify you. This is just for you to register to vote. And, it's all about you, and it's your opportunity for democracy. And don't let all the other distractions and all the other things get in your way of anything to do with voting. I'm here to tell you, and we're here to say, no, we're not selling your lists. We're not giving out your email. We're not giving your phone number out." And I specifically told them, even if they put it on the sheet, on the registration form, we weren't going to put it into our data system, and there'd be no access to their email or their cell phone number. So We specifically understand that concern's been out there for years, the jury duty kind of folklore, and we try to beat it back.
Okay, so those of you in the viewing audience, now you know you can vote safely without having to worry about getting jury duty. So, okay, you were mentioning something about a new law about absentee ballots.
New this year, absentee ballots have a different sort of like aura about them. It used to be you could ask for one, vote it, mail it back to us, and come and vote on election day on the machine, and basically in that choice would override your other choice and change your mind. This year it's different. This year it's different for a couple of reasons, but the first fact is when you just ask for an absentee ballot and we process it, you will not be able to vote on the machine for that election that you asked for the ballot and received it. The fact that you may not have cast it or whatever will not matter. It still will be on the machine in front of the poll worker that the person needs to vote by affidavit. And the reason for that is they're going to make us count absentee ballots prior to Election Day.
Oh, okay.
To speed up the process for the results.
Okay.
New York State wants to see if counting in advance of the election could help the results at the back end become quicker. Well, with that said, of course, if you send me in your ballot and I put it through a high-speed machine and already got yours done, you can't go to our machine and then put another one in because you've technically been, already accounted for, if you will. So the new thing this year, and it could be very much of a learning curve, and we're going to try to educate people to the best of our ability, is if you ask for an absentee ballot and we process it, you will not be able to vote on the machine in early voting or on the machine on election day. You can still vote affidavit, but you will not be able to do like you have in the past, come in on election day, say, I thought I was going to be out of town, I'm not out of town, or whatever the scenario happened to be, and come in on election day and vote. And in that case, the poll workers would say, please have at her. We would then realize as we ran a report that we have your absentee ballot after the election, and we would discard that and take your election day ballot as your casting vote. Not anymore.
Not anymore.
And we could see that could cause some problems because it's been decades of allowing people to basically have that option. And all of a sudden this year you don't. So conversion to that awareness and education will be a big piece of it because people are going to say, why is that? And it's because New York State changed the format on how we handle our absentees, when we count them, and how the scenario is going to go forward. And with that said, they had to figure out a way to not allow somebody to kind of change their mind or, I am in town, so I will vote scenario, especially they're demanding us to count them prior to the election.
Okay, that's probably a good idea anyway. I remember after the 2020 presidential election, it was all week before we actually found out who won.
Yes.
Remember that? Yeah. It
Yes.
was, well, it was because there was a larger amount of absentee ballots requested that year on account of the coronavirus. People didn't want to come to the poll site to vote.
Right.
So,
We went from usually roughly around 4,000 to 14,000
oh my gosh.
in absentee
wow.
ballots.
Wow.
So people were taking advantage of the opportunity to not come to the polls, again, like you had mentioned, health concerns and issues. And they changed the format on how people can apply and what is allowed. And people bought into it very quickly, as you can tell. Over 3 times more people decided they would do that. And it shifted how we operate, and it shifted our labor and our focus. But with that came what you had mentioned is instead of having 4,000 to count after the election, you have 14,000 to count after the election.
And this would have been all the way across the country, too.
Oh, yes.
Yes, because of coronavirus,
Right.
everybody's behaviors were shifted, and many people decided voting by mail was a key component. And it came into focus very quickly And like I said, I've been doing this for 14 years, and I think our high mark, our highest level ever was 4,000 absentee ballots.
Wow.
That year was
Wow.
14,000 or somewhere in that area.
That was more than 3 times as many.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Now, Luz, you and I were on Spectrum News this winter. Do you want to say something about that? We were on there about, it was that guy that came around and...
It was the promotional piece for the poll worker outreach. New York State wanted to help us have poll worker awareness either month or week, and Spectrum
Yes.
chose Chautauqua County
Yes.
to create a piece to show statewide of recruitment.
Right. Right.
Yeah, it was you and me and another lady.
Yes, she was a new inspector.
Okay.
Yeah, and she so happened to said yes, she would do. I remember that now. I'm trying to think, when was that? That's right. That's
that
right.
Was,
yes,
that was back in the winter. And,
yes.
And then he was late getting to Mayville. I remember he got hung up in a.
Yeah.
He came to my house to
Yes, he
interview
did.
me, and then
Yes,
he
he
wound up being in a big hurry because he'd been hung up in a meeting that morning. And by the time he got to my house, he had like half or. Maybe not even half an hour, maybe it was 15 minutes or something to
Right.
interview me and get up to the Board of Elections where you and the other lady were.
Yes, yes. We did a whole scenario from my office to greeting the lady that was there. So yes, it was interesting.
Yeah, it was.
Yes.
So anyways, I remember Momina called me and said, "Oh, he's going to be later than." Then she goes, and it'll be an extra 15 minutes or half an hour or
Yeah.
something like that. And then he wound up being 15 minutes later than what she said. So.
Yes, he did call and he said, "Oh, I'm running late. Please call her, let her know I'm coming." So he didn't want to keep you waiting too long. But
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, that's the way it goes
Yes.
sometimes. But
unfortunately.
did you have any other people try to sign up after that aired on television?
Actually, no, we didn't. After that, no, it was just the one lady who was there to sign up, and she did, which was great. It was nice to meet. It's always nice to meet new inspectors, but yes, we are still looking for more inspectors. And I mean, we have it on our website. It's difficult now to get someone to work, but we're hoping.
Yeah. Well, do you want to mention how people can go about? Well, usually I get a postcard in the mail from you when it's time to sign up for being an election inspector. When the classes are going to be, can people? When will that be? Schedule be available? Do you know yet?
Well, right now, we have a schedule. Not sure if it's going to go through or how late it's going to, if we're even going to have one, being that we have possibly another primary.
Another primary in the middle. We've set
In the
our
middle.
training schedule twice now.
Okay.
Yes.
And then they gave us a second primary, and then we set our schedule again to modify to accommodate that. And now there is a special election that will be called by the governor for our congressional seat, where there'll be a vacancy based on Tom Reed's resignation.
Oh.
So the
Yes.
schedule where we thought we would be able to fit in training, the ones that you were talking about, where people come and get their updates for the year and relearn everything that they've had in the past, and any new individuals that we recruit come and get to know who we are and how to operate. We do have a schedule, and it was meant to come out early June for both the ends of the county, the north and the south, and here in Mayville to train people. It may have to once again be modified to match what our needs will be to run a special election.
Right.
We've already modified it once for the August primary.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Now we may end up
Okay.
ramming right into while we're trying to train, while we're trying to run elections, which will not work. So we may have to flip some of that information and some of those dates. Will it come out soon? Yes, our goal is June. Once we get a specific day for our special, we would then be able to evaluate where we could put the training, because obviously 10 days before a primary or a special, we're in session voting, and we can't
Right.
run successful training while we're trying to run successful early voting. It would be a very difficult task. So we'll, as a board, have to look at it again, and then the cards that you're talking about are ready, per se, but
Sort of.
sort of.
Yes.
But the schedule's been ready twice,
Yes.
and it's been modified twice, and it probably will be modified a third time. I don't see how we will be able to fit in the training the way we have it currently set up, based on what will be dropped on us eventually as far as a third election this summer.
Oh, okay.
Anyone interested in becoming an election inspector
Okay.
should call the Board of Elections in the meantime, and we'll make sure that they get a card once we know when the training
Oh,
dates are
okay.
going to be. So
Okay.
if anyone's interested,
Okay.
anyone listening in today,
Okay.
can just go ahead, call the Board of Elections, and we can
Okay.
put them.
Would you want to mention what the phone number is?
Yes, they should call 716-753-4580.
Okay, okay. I remember the year that I decided to start doing it. I had called up there and nobody answered the phone, so I left a message on an answering machine. And one of the people that does the training called me back a short while later and says, "Well, you're not registered as a Republican or a Democrat." She said, "You'll have to re-register if you want to be an election day worker." And I was registered as not wanting to be affiliated with any particular party, was what it was. So I wound up picking, registering as a Democrat. So would one of you want to explain why you have to be either a Republican or a Democrat to work on election day?
You have to be registered as one of the major, of the two major parties in order to work. Go
It's
ahead.
election law.
Yeah.
It states in election law that it's equal representation of the two major parties. The two major parties are represented by the two highest vote totals of the governor's race every 4 years. It's been Democrat and Republican forever, but it could be another party based on how the Constitution is set up. But the system is set up for two major parties to run the boards of elections, so it's bipartisan. Myself and Luce have equal authority, equal power, equal employees, equal everything. And the idea is for us to basically balance each other off to make sure that there is integrity within the elections. With that said, it clearly states that the poll workers have to be Republicans or Democrats, representing the major parties. In Chautauqua County, we've never taken the liberty of expanding that in any way, shape, or form. We take it the way it's kind of presented, which is the two major parties. With that said, we talk to individuals like yourself and say, hey, it's the two major parties that run the boards of elections. Would you mind switching to one of the two major parties so you could become part of the team? And it's been like that, forever. Other counties are maybe to the point where they're not holding people to that accountability. But at this point, up until today, right now, we've said to individuals, it is equal partnership. Either you're representing, in your case, Luce in the Democratic Party at the poll site, or you'd be representing Brian in the Republican Party at the poll site. And we try to make sure everybody's obviously registered into one of those two major parties, and we put them to work. Again, it's a tougher stipulation because it takes some people out of the mix that would say, I'm not going to go to one of the major parties just to work. We understand that. It's how the system was set up, because when you're sitting at a table, like you mentioned earlier, a guy came in with his card, there was a Republican sitting right next to you, and the balance is supposed to be there are two major parties are monitoring each other to make sure that the elections are carried out, properly. So the law has got that sort of, hey, each of you have your equal share of responsibility, but it's become very difficult because A, there's not enough people who want to do the job, and B, then you got to find individuals who want to become a part of the major party. So yeah, it is a hurdle. It's a hurdle that we have handled up until now, but again, it's getting more difficult by the day because there just isn't a workforce for us or for any of the items out, the fast foods or whatever programs or grocery stores are always looking for people. It's spilled over to our world, and our world has now become a difficult place to fill, especially with the provisions of what we read in election law.
Yeah. Now, about the training, usually it's been held in August or September, but you're holding it early this year, so does that mean that you need more people for the primaries?
No.
No?
We would use limited individuals for the primaries because they're going to be slow.
Oh,
And the
okay.
voter turnout will be limited because first
Okay.
you take 80,000 people and you shrink it down to 50,000. Then you put them in months like June, July, and August. You can almost guarantee that the turnout will be
Small.
small. Percentually,
Okay.
very small.
Okay.
With that said, the staffing needs at the poll sites will be very limited. So it's not like you need more people. It's the difficulty of trying to fit in, okay, if we have them working in June, then we have them working in July, and we have them working in August, and we have the 10 days prior to each of those three events.
Then-
How do you put those dates to match?
Right.
Then you have to figure out when would be a good time, when you'd have time to have the training.
That's where we're
Right.
at,
Okay.
yes.
Yes.
That's why the schedule has moved twice and it's
Yes.
pending a third move, is because there's not a block of time available for us that we need, because like I mentioned earlier, we're in the North County at JCC North. We're here at the Carlson Center in Mayville, and we're down at JCC South for our training sessions. This year in a commercial break, we had to move out of JCC North because they got some construction going on. So we'll be at the BOCES
BOCES.
facility in Fredonia
Oh, okay.
for the training
Yes.
for the North County individuals. But once again, you got to block off 3 to 5 days of each sessions to get as many people as possible. Well, 3 to 5 days in a session where we're talking about election, it's a challenge. But we will come up with a schedule. We'll make sure it works for everybody. It's going to be tight and difficult because there's going to be a lot of moving parts, but here's our goal is to get everybody trained to the best of our ability. And again, we will sandwich it in between 3 full-blown primaries. How, we're not 100% sure, but
Yeah.
hold tight, we'll come up with something.
Okay, it will happen anyways. Well, I know that we have to take the training every year in order to continue being able to work on Election Day. Would you explain why that is? There must be changes, new things.
It's twofold. Number one, it's election law. It says you have to train your individuals once a year. Now they've modified that to be something different, like they can actually do online training if you want, as a county, to have people just do training online. They've made that option available, and they've made training a much less priority. I don't like the law, and neither does Luce. And here's the reason, is what you just said.
Okay.
How about all the changes? Every year, you know, you've come back, you know better than most that, hey, there's just a new wrinkle coming. And we talked about the new wrinkle, which says I got to turn away a voter who's asked for an absentee ballot. You need to understand that. You need to be trained. You need to understand how to handle that individual and why you're saying what you're saying to that person. You're not just looking at the computer screen that says this person has to vote affidavit. You understand that they got an absentee ballot, and you understand the law now requires that they can't vote on the machine. You understand it's because we're going to count their ballot prior to Election Day. So with all those things said, we need to have you, and we need to train you, and we need to educate all of our poll workers to be fully aware of all the situations, the nuances, the changes, the things that we're required to make sure get carried out at the poll site. So training is twofold. Number one, it is mandatory, and number two, it is very necessary. Because the laws change rapidly. There's over 100 changes over the past 2 years, and individuals like yourself who come back every year who got the core knowledge need to have the extra knowledge. And that's why we need to get you in front of our 2 trainers and let them help basically update you. As you mentioned real quick, you said, what about the new things? Yes, the new things are critically important because you need to understand why you're doing what you're doing.
Now, some people seem to think that Russia, for example, can interfere with our elections. Would one of you like to explain why that cannot happen?
I have this one too.
You want me to have this one?
Yes.
Our phone rings regularly, and people ask this very similar question in a very similar format. I can only speak to, and I will only speak to, on behalf of Luce and myself, New York State elections and Chautauqua County elections, which are combined within New York State. Our system is set up as a bipartisan system. She's keeping an eye on me, and I'm keeping an eye on her in a very positive way. We double check each other to make sure that the integrity of the job is carried out, from going to get the mail, to registering the voter, to doing everything, to creating ballots, to doing everything. At the poll site, you sit next to a Republican. Everybody's watching each other to make sure that everything is carried out in a very proper way. That's number one. Number two, the system we have has a paper backup. It's a paper ballot. If anybody feels that there was something wrong, we still own the piece of paper that you put your pen to and filled in the ovals. We test the machine going out. We test a percentage of them coming back. We have bipartisan teams overwatching each other during the entire process. She has her staff, I have my staff. They have to work as tandem, they have to work as pairs. They audit the machines, like I mentioned, going out, and there is a certain amount of audit when it comes back. There is no port on the scanner. The scanner cannot be hooked up to the internet. There is no way to go in and manipulate the data. It is a scanner who recognizes one thing: did you fill in an oval or did you not fill in an oval? And it basically tabulates it. There is no opportunity to go in at any spot within our election and say that any of that information has been modified. You go around the machine, there's no ports, there's no outside source, there's no internet connection. It is a standalone device that tallies the ballots that go in. At our office, the machine that makes the ballots is a standalone unit. It is not connected to any other computer, and it's not connected to the internet. It is used for one thing: to create these ballots that are the blueprint for democracy here, voting in New York State. Again, if there was access, and if the Russians could hack it, and if there was some sort of integrity flaw, the staff at the Board of Elections would have to tally them up by hand, and they would have to look at the result tape and look at what they came up with and go, we got a problem. But in reality, there won't be a problem, because the machine only identifies what the people are going to physically look at and physically count at the end of the day. So the hacking or the changing or the whatever, as far as the mechanism of voting in New York State, is very solid in the integrity from front to back. We also go back deeper into the process, and we update our voter records every day. We painstakingly look at obituaries, we painstakingly go through all the reports, we painstakingly make people inactive, we painstakingly register, we painstakingly do whatever we can to keep the information that the Board of Elections is 100% up to date as humanly possible. So that way, when the information goes out to your poll site saying that that individual is available and ready to vote, it's the most accurate, updated information we can possibly provide. If that person passes away, unfortunately, we'll purge that individual out of the voter rolls, and you will not see that person in the booklet waiting for them to come to the poll site. It's not doable, and again, it still has a little glitch there. The information has to get to the Board of Elections. We have to be able to identify somebody who's passed away, or somebody who's moved, or somebody who, whatever the records are, they need to get to us. But rest assured, when those records get to us, we modify them daily. There is no backlog. There is no, wow, we'll get to them when we get to them. It's a daily event. And it's a daily event to provide you, the poll worker, the most updated information for the customer, which is what a voter is, to then participate in the process that I explained, which is paper-driven, documents, bipartisan, watched by two sides of the aisle, from the minute the ballot's created to the minute the ballot is stored away in a double-locked door. She has the key, I have the key, and if it gets real serious, there's a third key for the sheriff. And none of the three of us can get into that building, that room, whatever, without all three of us coming together at the same time.
Oh, all three of you
Yes.
together.
So
Wow.
it's very intense. And in the early voting, we take the ballots out of the machine. We put them in a 400-pound safe that's fireproof, bulletproof, whatever proof, and we store them there and inside of a room that has two locks on it, a Republican and a Democrat. Unless the Democrat is there with a Republican and they both agree to enter that room, it doesn't happen.
Okay. And then we're signing people in electronically too, and it's my understanding that those machines are not hooked up to the internet either.
They are.
They are?
They communicate with each other, and I'll tell you why they do. If you work early voting in Dunkirk, and somebody comes in, Luz Torres walks in the door, and you wait on her, that computer, that little e-poll book is what we call it, will communicate to all the rest of the e-poll books and say, she's done. She no longer can vote. She already voted with
But that's
Gail.
only within Chautauqua County, right?
Within that
Right.
those programs to those machines.
Okay.
They communicate
Yes.
with each other
Each
to make
other.
sure that she can't then drive to a different early voting site or a third early voting site and participate in the voting process 3 times. We have a check system in place with our e-poll books. That's the voter information that says to them, don't let her vote. She voted in Dunkirk, don't let her vote in Mayville. She voted in Mayville, don't let her vote in at the Jackson Center in Jamestown. So
Okay.
those booklets, those e-poll books, do have the Wi-Fi capabilities of communicating just for that sole purpose, to make sure we don't have duplicate voters. So it's the machine where the standalone computer is there and the standalone scanner is there, where there is no port access to modify the results of what Gail put into the machine and what were her selections.
Yeah, I kind of like to bring this stuff up because, you know, so many people have heard so much stuff over the last couple of years that,
We get many calls.
Yeah.
We get many issues. We get many questions about voting. And the part that we always have to stop and pump the brakes for ourselves is we answer questions based on New York State elections and, in turn, Chautauqua County. What happens in other states, we can't speak to because obviously we're not experts, we're not there, we don't run those programs, we're not part of that. But we know here in New York State, and we will advocate hard to anybody who wants to challenge it, that we have multiple safeguards and multiple individuals that are watching each other. There's not a spot on that machine that you can open up that doesn't have a tag on it and a seal on it that isn't verified by 2 individuals and then signed off on. It is that detail-oriented, and you see the machines.
oh, yeah.
You break
Yeah.
into the machine down at the Carlson Community Center, there's a tag on that, and it has a number. And when they put the new tag on it and the new security and the new number, you have to record it.
Yeah,
And
there is a bunch. If you're one of the people that's opening the machines in the morning and again in the last thing in the evening after the poll closes, there's a whole bunch of different steps that you have to take, and you literally have to have the instructions in front of your face, you
Yes.
know, because it's that complicated.
Yes.
So.
It's methodical, and it's methodical for a reason. The security measures that are put in place for the integrity of the election is in your hands at that point. And you need to now be an extension of the Board of Elections, which is you and your Republican counterpart need to now carry out the chain of custody, if you will, to make sure that there's no aspect within this process that somebody could say, what if, wait a minute, what about? That's why it's you and your Republican partner working together. She says the number, you write it down, you look over, you put your initials. All the information provided is 2 individuals double checking each other.
Yeah, and then whoever is the one that's opening and closing those machines on a certain day, somebody has to wear this lanyard with the keys on it. There's keys and all kinds of things.
The keys will get you into the machine, and then there's like a little I button,
Yeah.
and the
Oh,
I
yeah.
button
Yeah.
will then open and close the machine. It opens
Yes.
it up in the morning and it closes it down at night. It recognizes that little button, only recognizes that machine. If you took that button to a different machine, it would say, I don't recognize it, or a different poll site. It's specific for
Right.
your
Your
site.
machine.
It's definitely meant to make sure that the machine and the individual who's carrying it around their neck is one and the same, and they understand
Right,
how to
right.
close it.
And then we have to do a certain amount of paperwork, like whoever's opening the machines in the morning, we have to write down what the numbers were on all of those seals and things. And then in the evening when we close it up, we have to write down the numbers.
Yes.
The numbers of the new ones that we put on, and yeah, there's quite a bit to it. And then there's like a long cash register thing that you have to take out at
Yes.
the end of the
End
day.
of night report,
And then
yes.
there's some of us have to sign that. And,
Yes.
and-
Yes.
yeah, you want to describe the gone in 5 minutes thing when the polls close? There's something about you're supposed to get that tape out of there and get it signed, and it's supposed to go back to the Board of Elections. They're supposed to be leaving with it at 5 minutes before.
After the polls are closed, that's
Yeah,
correct.
yeah.
That phrase was coined by us, Chautauqua County. It's used throughout New York State. It's the system that we kind of developed was gone in 5. And what it means, in our opinion, is look at the polls close at 9. And what people are looking for at that minute is the results. We're a fast food society. We want to know the results yesterday, okay? We understand that. We're people that deal with, we like results too. So the longer the results aren't on the screen or the TV set or the email or whatever someone's looking at, the website, the more people are getting anxious. So our goal was to do this as quickly and as efficiently as possible. So what we designed was a formula, the one's very similar to what you're talking about, where you go to the machine, you shut it down. The minute you hit the right buttons, that registered tape from, the local grocery store looks like it, but that's not really a registered tape for a grocery store. That is results. That is what has been cast inside that machine all day long.
Yes.
And you take that information, which is now on paper, everybody can read it if they so choose, and you take out the data disk there's 2 of them inside the front of that machine, and you take that data disk and you put those 2 things together in what we call a speed bag, another acronym that we created here, and boards of elections throughout New York State are doing this. You put it in the speed bag. And the speed meaning get that thing back to Mayville as fast as possible. That was the acronym of why we call it that. 2 people at the poll site have to verify, like you said, at the bottom of that register tape, there's your signatures, Republican, Democrat. You then put it into a speed bag with that little data disk. You seal it. Again, the seal is acknowledged, what
Yeah.
number the seal is, and now you're handing it off to what we call runners.
Runners, right.
Individuals, a pair of individuals who will take your results.
They
and
come down from the Board of Elections.
They come from wherever they come from, and then they end up at the Board of Elections.
Okay.
Because
Yes.
then their job is one thing, grab that blue bag and get it up to the Board of Elections as soon as possible. I personally, along with Luce or one of Luce's representatives, break into that bag, the speed bag, hand that disc to a Republican and a Democrat to now upload it into the system and put the results on the website as fast as they can get us those discs back from Silver Creek, Forestville, Carroll. I mean, you all over the county. Remember, we're a very large county. These people are running to get the results back to the Board of Elections so the 2 of us can crack into it, hand it off to another Republican and Democrat team to then upload the information onto votechautauqua.com, also upload the information to the New York State Board of Elections if it's a congressional race or Senate race or whatever race that has more than one county, and basically let people see exactly what the results were from election night. We are very, very happy that we can say by like 10:13, 10:15, we're normally done.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Would you mind telling the viewing audience what your website is?
Oh, it's votechautauqua.com, and it is cool. And it will basically answer every question that we won't be answering with you today. It will tell you where you vote. It will give you a map of how to get to where you vote. It will tell you if you want to be a poll worker, these are the steps necessary. It will tell you who your representatives are. It gives you a complete list of everybody that is a currently elected official, called a municipal directory. It shows you sample ballots. Right now, currently, if you want to look at your school sample ballot, what does your school ballot look like? Go to our website, click on Chautauqua Lake Central School, and you'll see it. You'll see who's running for the board positions. You'll see whatever their capital projects or budget concerns are, yes or no. It's all right there. As soon as that election's over, we will then put up the June primary and let people review their ballot. VoteChautauqua.com is an extremely efficient way of educating yourself on not only your own private personal stuff, but educate yourself on the schools. What does the ballot look like? Poll worker, would I like to become? Hey, who represents me? I don't even know that person. And you could scroll down through Chautauqua and find out who each individual is, from the Mayville mayor to the Chautauqua Town Board and Chautauqua Town Clerk, anybody you want, their phone numbers, their email addresses, all listed there for you, along with every voting need you would have. Opportunity to register to vote, there's a form there. Opportunity to grab an absentee ballot, there's a form there. It's a plethora of looking at either today, tomorrow, or even historic election results. You think, well, how many people turned out, whatever? That's all there back to 1950, 45, something like that. I mean, we
Oh, really?
consolidated a
Yes.
historical snapshot. There's a lot of information, again, and it can be the point where you can just say, I just need to know, where do I vote? I just need to know what's election day. I just need to know, am I registered? It can answer all the questions for
Yeah,
you.
sometimes people, I've noticed that, sometimes people don't remember. You know, at the November elections, you don't have to ask them what party they're registered as, but I remember the one time that I worked at a primary, there were people coming in that said they didn't remember what they were registered as.
That's common. We get that question throughout, and they'll say, I think I am, and they'll fill in the blank. I think I'm a Democrat. In reality, they don't know, and they kind of are like, gosh, I thought at one time I sent the form in, I'm not sure, what am I? And you, at your local poll site, can look them up and tell them what they are, and say, I'm sorry, you're listed as no party, and this is only an election for Democrats today. Oh, must be I never sent that in, or geez, I meant to, or whatever, and you educate them, but again, a lot of people don't know if they're a member of a party or not. They do know they're registered voters, they just don't know to which political party, if there is one. And then when they show up on election day for a primary, it matters. Because of course we can only allow people who are part of that party to vote. Come November, it doesn't matter. You're not going to ask the question, it's just a registration or not, and it's a lot easier equation because people remember that they're registered to vote because they get that yellow card from us every year in the mail, and we tell them you're a registered voter.
So make sure to check your cards, everybody.
Yes, we just sent out 80,000 of those, and
Oh, yeah.
and we do that once a year, and we basically are reaching out to say, are you still there? Are you good? Everything is fine? Is this your permanent spot of residence? This is your permanent this, or is this your party affiliation at the time? So we try to educate everybody with that card. That is a law that we have to reach out every year, but it is a very good source of information for them to understand what they are at that point.
Yeah, the other time that I had you on to be interviewed, Brian, afterwards we were talking about all of this, and you said, oh, you know what we didn't talk about today, and then you mentioned something. And I have been trying so hard to get that to pop into my head what you said that day, and it won't come in there.
Well, I gotta admit, I don't recall. I
You don't
thought we were
you don't-
brainstorming there at the end, and there was like more than one topic
Well,
that
yeah,
we
it-
glazed over. I remember real quickly that we were talking about a lot of different things within the aspects of voting, but like I said, any questions that anybody has about themselves, the Board of Elections, anything to do with educational piece, the votechautauqua.com will get them where they need to be. If they have any questions, we're there 8:30 to 4:30 every day, Monday through Friday. We do early voting, 9 days prior to the election.
And you have things you have to do to get ready for the election the last day. That's why people can't early vote the day before
Right,
election
because we're out
day.
turning on the machines
Yes.
and delivering and doing all of the last minute details, if you
Right,
will.
right.
So we can't be tied down, sitting there waiting for people to come in and presenting the service. We need to have our staff in the field preparing the site, having it ready, so at 6 a.m. when the door opens, the tables are set, the electronic devices are there, the standing voting booths are in the positions they need to be. I mean, it's all orchestrated and planned out. It's not haphazard. We try to do the best we can to present ourselves in a way that is accommodating. And you understand that. They're our customers. We give them the best parking spots. We make sure that there's ample parking. We make sure that there's good signage, as you know, to direct people. We make sure there's a good flow. We make sure that it's welcoming. We make sure that if they're confused, we answer any question. But it doesn't happen without a lot of preparation. And that's where the boards of elections behind the scenes are preparing for that moment of that individual to come in and spend those 6 minutes with us.
Right, right. So Luz, how did you like being interviewed today?
Well, I was a little nervous. Well, I still am, but it was easier than I would have thought.
Yeah, it's not too bad,
Yeah,
is it?
no, it's not.
Okay, well, I'm glad that you came on with Brian today. That was one thing that we talked about when we were doing that brainstorming after the last interview. I said, all of a sudden I realized there were things we hadn't talked about, and I said, would you be willing to come back in again for another episode? And he said he would, and then Chris goes, well, you'll have to get Luz to come in with
Yes.
him too, you know, so that both of you are here. So I appreciate that you came on today. And
you.
we've come to the end of another episode of Fresh Perspectives, and I'll see those of you in the viewing audience on the next episode.